So please welcome again Anca Damian. Looks fabulous on the big screen. A lot of times when we see these films, we're seeing them on small monitors. So sometimes new directors, it's the first chance I get to see it writ large up there, and it looked quite wonderful. Let me start by asking you this. What did you decide to do first? Did you decide you wanted to make a film using these various techniques, or did you decide you wanted to tell this story of Crulic?
I started by telling the story, I think the first level, and this is what I learned for my first teacher in movie making, Akira Kurosawa, who said everyone has to get at its level the understanding of the movie. I mean, if you start someone who's coming to see a movie about this case should understand this story. But of course, I wasn't interested to make an investigation movie. I wasn't, so from the very beginning, I knew that I want to go further and I want to tell it differently. And so I decided to tell the story from his point of view, because for me, this was the most important thing and the most to tell it from inside. So I first wrote the voice. This was the first, and I first recorded the voice. Then I recorded the voice with Vlad Ivanov. And after I recorded it, and I wrote the script I mean, I was going with the audio, the voice, and the images. We started to storyboard it, and then we started to decide what techniques. And this is also a moment where I must say that it was, in the beginning, an economical decision to mix the techniques. It was like we are not able, we were 5 people, we couldn't do a long feature animation. So it was like, but the concept of materiality of the techniques, it was like to follow the death. It was 2 months of fighting in between us, because it was like the animators come from a visual background, and they were attached to some visual things, and I didn't want to follow. I mean, if the technique is not going the story further, that is not good. I mean, they should be organically integrated, and the idea was to follow the story and to tell it from to help the storyline with the technique. So when he starts to work, his hands becomes concrete. Then when he dies, the line lose the contour. And in the same time, I wanted that when he's released, to make a change. I mean, it's the real time, and also to enter real shootings with the reconstruction in drawings of the prison, and to mix the real shooting with the drawings.
Let me just ask here, so you had a number of animators, and did they all work in different styles, or did each of them have their own style, and you had to fit that in to your story?
No. It was like there were 2 creative guys. The others were just helping the 2 of them. And when we first met, and I started to tell first of all, I needed a month to make them understand the story, because it was not, okay, so what's a guy who died making hunger strike, and he was supposed to be a thief, and perhaps he was a thief before, and it became, for them it was not their story, so it took long. I started to tell them it's about, in fact, the theme of the movie is the death. We have this hat on everything, and we started to decide which technique will be used, and make a kind of animatic with the techniques to follow the construction of the story. And in fact, after this was done, it was also a kind of let's say exactly timeline of the movie in seconds that we followed from the beginning to the end, because I made first the sound. The sound mix was done before the images were ready.
It's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
The opposite of what one might normally do.
Yeah, yeah.
See if there are any questions out here. Yes, in the back.
I was just wondering what influenced you to decide to use animation for this film. I thought it was great. I thought it was incredible, and it reminded me of a great graphic novel called House, where the artist chose to recollect his father's memory of the Holocaust by doing graphics. So I was wondering what inspired you to do it this way.
So the question is, and of course he thought the movie was great. I agree, obviously. What led you, yes, to decide to use animation, to use another really a different form in terms of telling the story?
I don't believe that this movie could be done in live action, and I was not at all interested in making a documentary, in hearing what people are saying about him or what. This was completely something that I didn't. So this was the only language that could bring the story to the audience, and it was. I had the idea of using animation also at my previous movie, which I finished like a documentary. It was a kind of group who did psychodrama in a prison. And this was the first time that I wanted to bring animation and to mix animation with shootings, but I lost the interest for my characters, and I couldn't follow that project. It was also so I finished it just like a documentary, and step forward to this project. And I believe, I mean, I'm coming from a visual background. I was painting in my youth. I was director of photography then. So for me, the visual part of telling the story is rather strong. So it was very exciting.
Well, it's interesting. You'll see. We were actually talking about this yesterday. This idea of films that just, it's not a documentary. It's not fiction. That films can just be a blending of all these things. And actually, at 4:15, the next film in here, an oversimplification of beauty. You're going to see animation used. You're going to see all sorts of different things used in a film that is neither fiction nor nonfiction, really. Yes. So what attracted you to this story?
When I first heard about this story, I was fascinated by the way Crulic died. I mean, while making Hunger Strike, it's a long death where the body starts to close. Everything is not vital. And it is, in a way, you can even contemplate while dying, because you are not, he was not already dead, but he wasn't quite alive. So it's a long process of going to the other world. So this was, in fact, the trigger that brought me to this story. when I started to let's say to put it in a project, I saw hunger, and this was the moment when I was almost going to stop it, saying it was such a beautiful movie, Hunger, Steve McQueen's movie with Michael Fassbender. How can I repeat a movie or do something better than he has done? But meanwhile, I already started the research, and I couldn't stop myself, and it was also something that I felt that I would be just the same like the others behind him, and would leave him, because he died left by everyone. And it was, I started to have a kind of, it was, you know, when I couldn't stop to go to the end, even if the research was quite heavy and quite unpleasant sometimes, because I had to deal with authorities and with prosecutors, and it was not also a lot of people to find people who knew him, who met him, and it was not, let's say, an easy and a pleasant trip to Krakow just to visit the old city.
So it's interesting that you had to interview people. You had to really do research as if it were a documentary,
Yes.
to get all this information.
Yes, but I mean, I never interviewed people with, I just spoke with them.
Okay.
They were also a lot of people afraid to talk. It was, the host in Poland was found hanged after he died, so a lot of people thought that this case is dangerous also to speak about it. And in the same time, I started to make thousands of photos in all the places. I prepared the animation by making a lot of images and a lot of, let's say, shootings, but just for research reason, to know how were the places, how look the people, how is the face, how were the faces, and in the last line.
No, that's okay. Oh, I'm sorry, all the way in the back, sorry.
Yeah.
It's a question about who decided to, I think I know the answer to this, but who decided to use in certain places the actual photographs mixed in with the animation?
This decision was one of the first decisions that I had, because I also, I mean, for me, the mixing of the reality with the animation gives a power which I couldn't get it just making an animation. If you put his flip-flops or his shirt or his photos when he was young, these are much more, can really touch you, because this guy is not anymore alive, and there are not ordinary photos that I just invented for the movies. These were the reality of those photos, and the reality of those objects gave a lot of emotional and emotion in the movie. And it was also when I found the last images on his camera. It was I went to the north part of Romania on -22 degrees. It was like heavy winter, to meet his sister, and who had on his camera, she took the camera from the prison, and she used it like a camera. It was not, she didn't took out the photos that he made. And I got those photos from the camera, and it was I felt it's such a treasure, and they were in a way they were alive for me. So I brought also some video art elements to the movie, moving some shadows, some wind, or a motorcycle is going. So these ideas came while I entered in contact with the real photos, and it was also for giving the impression that in fact they were alive in a strange way, but they were still alive, the images. And
when you, as you worked on this film, because I find it a very interesting way, as you say, you do the audio before you did the animation, but you also had to write this story and you storyboarded it. And as you are writing and as you are then storyboarding, did you have in your head the kind of visuals that would be drawn? You know, like for instance, when he dies at the end, did you know as you were writing it or storyboarding it that it would be that beautiful
yes.
white piece? So you had all those things
Yes.
in place.
Yes, and this was, I mean, this sequence with the end came also, I mean, all the sequences came from my research and the contact. When I went to the hospital where he died, I wanted to see the room where he was brought after he died, and it's named mortuary room or something like that. And it was a Polish guy who didn't speak English and who pushed me inside, saying that he's not going, he doesn't want to see I mean, I understood that he didn't want to find a dead guy to see a body in that room, because it's in a mortuary room in a hospital. Usually there is someone dead inside.
One would expect.
And I was pushed, it was a hall and then the room after the corner. And in the room on the bed, there was this white sheet, and it had the form of a corpse, of a body. And in fact, there was nobody inside, and this gave me the idea of when he's dying, this is going to flow, and we can see that in fact the body is not him, the dead body is not him, and this is a kind of, so also this sequence was written while I was doing the research, and the idea was brought to me by the reality I saw, and it was a kind of, it was a beautiful, in fact, it was a beautiful white shape of the body without the body inside.
It was just such a beautiful image at the end. Yes? Yes, and that's a question I think you all heard about your decision to use two different voices.
I wanted to use only Crulic's voice in the beginning. And this was, I mean, if I'm asked now if it's a good choice to use two voices, I still can't say, anyway, it is done. So it was, I wanted in the beginning to use just Crulic voice, but at the moment, I wanted that he's not speaking anymore, even if technically I could do it, because the beginning of the movie is after he died. So he was still speaking, so he could speak also in his last days. But there was a lot of information that he couldn't know. So there was a lot of information from outside, from the what was happening, not with him. And so I would have lost a lot of details that would give strength, in fact, to the story. So I decided to introduce another voice, and another voice was just like someone who is contemplating what's happening and how small facts brings this snowballing of events. And I luckily for the international version, I had the option to do in a different language. Also because I thought anyway, the foreign audience will read the subtitles for the Crulic's voice. Let them not read at least for the other voice, and make them let them look at the images without reading subtitles. And also, it makes a huge difference between Crulic. You are not confusing in who's speaking now, and this was a kind of solution. I'm not sure, and I perhaps there could be a version of the movie only with his voice, but in fact I tried, but I didn't think that it was concluding, and it was also, I needed some quiet from him. It's like someone who's turning his face from the word and is not he's going. It should sound a little bit strange to still speak and make jokes, even if he's.
It does. It makes a lot of sense to, at least in viewing it, to see it that way. And certainly, as I say, the international audience to, reading the subtitles of in his voice, if you will.
And I
makes
also,
sense.
Now it's done. It will be done a French version, and hopefully it will be done also. It was done a Polish version, and it will be done also an English version of the movie.
But his voice will always be Romanian.
No.
Ah, okay.
No, it will be. I mean, in the French version, it will be Vlad Ivanov who will speak French. Luckily, he speaks French, and but the narrator will be a woman. This is the distributor's idea, Emmanuelle Béard. And it's like saying that the first journalist who discovered the case, Malgorzata Nociun, was a woman, that I'm a woman, and it also make a difference between the voices, which will help not too confusing, perhaps. I didn't want to bring a woman's voice in. I don't think that it is. I have no genre when I'm doing a movie, so I didn't want it to be such a personal touch in putting a woman's voice in the narrator, because it's not. In fact, it's just a narrator. It's not me. But I think that perhaps this would, and if it will be done in English version, it will be needed. Two different voice, one younger, one older, or something, two different accents, and perhaps a regional accent, a Scottish accent for Crulic.
Perhaps. This sounded Irish, I think?
It's Scottish.
Or Scottish. I was close.
But it's also for the sake of looking at the images. I believe that the original, as much as is possible, the original voice is always better. But there are so many images that change so quickly, and if you are still reading, I think that at least 30% is lost, if not more.
No, and it's true, because it's to hear an original voice is very true, but and especially with the animation, you're not actually watching people speak. That having it in another language can really help us concentrate on what we want to see. Yes. Okay, yeah, you mentioned an American version. I don't know if there actually will be one yet. And talk about, I mean, I think I can say does not have distribution yet in the United States.
Yes. I mean, the movie had word sales, and they are trying, they have a Canadian distributor, and they are trying to attach an American distributor. It was like Sony was interested, but finally they didn't commit to distribute it. And they are discussing, I mean, it is at this moment, they seem to be close to, as the movie is traveling from south by southwest here and is going still to San Francisco, even if the American premiere was in Telluride. in September last year. So now it's a moment when they hope to close the distribution for United States. I hope, I mean, there is this audience that, the Anglophone audience that it is, Europe is almost all sold, but we stopped at United Kingdom.
And then jump off. Well, it's interesting because it can take a long time. As you say, it was in Telluride, it's been in other festivals, now it's here, it will go on to San Francisco, and just sometimes it takes a lot of bit of traveling around.
Yes, and it takes time also to because it's a strange movie. It's not like it's a slot that you know which audience you address, and it is hard to bring the audience to inside the hall, I think, and it should be a good marketing done. I mean, I heard even in Romania and even in Poland, or where it was already theatrically distributed, a lot of people saying why. I had such a big surprise why it was not best. Let's say, presented before, marketed before. They didn't know about. So when you read it's an animation about a guy who died making hunger strike, neither me, I would not be so happy to go in this hall. So they should find, in the French distributor found the title Le Voyage de Monsieur Crulic in translation, which makes it much more attractive. I mean, I understand that till someone is going out from his house and coming to the cinema, they need to have an argument. So any argument would be good.
Yes, a very good reason for people. You're right, and even as we were writing blurbs and writing about this, it is. How do you explain to people? It's about a very sad subject, but it's so beautifully done. There also is wit and irony, all those things, yeah. And people like this get it, but it's to get larger audiences sometimes. But I also like to think that having the film in new directors here in New York, that also sends a signal to distributors a lot, who it makes them take more notice than they might have before. So keep your eyes out and tell your friends. And I think I'm getting from the look from our wonderful manager that our time is up. We have to finish questions, but you can actually probably talk to Anca outside in the lobby. Anca, thank you very much for this most beautiful film.
For inviting me.
And we thank all of you for your questions and attention.